Hello and welcome everyone, Lionheart here with my first impressions video for Total War Attila. Now I know the game's been out for just over a week, but I wanted to take that time to really get stuck into the game, learn some of its features, and then see what I liked, disliked, and wanted to see improved from this latest addition to the Total War series. I should say this video is by no means paid for or sponsored. These are all my own opinions, these are all my own thoughts and impressions about the game. As with all my content, that's exactly the same. It's all my own stuff, never gets paid for and never gets sponsored unless otherwise stated. So, what am I going to be covering in this first impressions? Well, I'm going to look at various features and sections of the game, things like factions, campaign, battles, performance, sound, sieges and naval battles, and kind of just go literally through a book of notes that I've made of things that I've seen, things that I like, things I dislike, and things that I want to see improved across all of those different areas. You'll see some footage up on the screen to correlate with each of the topics that I'm talking about and to highlight some of the issues. But first of all, before we start, up on screen now are my PC settings, and also I'll be throwing up my system specs in a few seconds as well. At the end of this video I'm also going to show you a benchmark with those settings so you can see how the game runs, and that will link back to the performance section when I talk about issues and bits there. Should start off by saying that overall I quite like Total War Attila. There's certainly things that can be improved, but for the most part it's definitely an improvement on Rome 2. And there's plenty of things, features both old and new, that have returned or been brought in that really do help Attila become a pretty solid Total War edition. So, first off, I'm going to start off with factions. I should mention again that this impressions is mainly looking at the single player side of things. I may well look at multiplayer later on in another video. Also, if you have any issues with any of the impressions, comments, opinions that I have, feel free to comment and let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there features that I've missed out that you'd like to hear my opinion on? Let me know in the comments. And also, if you'd like to hear a full review of the game in a couple of weeks' time when I've really got through, you know, to late game and completed bits, then let me know as well in the comments. So, starting on factions. Characters and the playable factions themselves, and by characters I mean kind of the family trees and faction leaders that you encounter, they seem pretty unique, and there's a reasonable roster for most of the playable factions. I like the return obviously of the family tree and the skills to characters and development, but I feel that skills in particular could be made, or rather expanded upon, a bit further. It seems like it's a good start, but there could be more depth added here. There's a good variety of starting locations. You've got plenty of areas to start off as, and obviously different types of factions, as in those that are starting to try and create a kingdom, those that are migrating and hordes, and those that just want to burn everything down, such as the Huns. It really does link into the gritty feel and period setting of destruction and razing that Attila brings to the series, which is I certainly feel that Attila isn't a Total War game about kingdom building and empire management, more about survival, and obviously the objectives in game reflect this most of the time, telling you to survive to a certain time period to complete a certain set of objectives with bonuses as well. Unit rosters, as I said, are good overall. However, there is a tendency to be a few too many factions using Nordic troops than I'd like. Wouldn't mind seeing some of those factions fleshed out. I know in the past Creative Assembly have gone back and later patched in additional units for free, such as the Carthage and Swaby updates we saw with Rome 2. So I think a few factions could deal with a little bit of extra unit love there, Creative Assembly. Campaign-wise, the AI seems, if anything, more focused on the player than ever before. It really does, because of this, present, I think, the toughest Total War challenging experience that I've ever faced. It's certainly one of the hardest Total Wars I've played. Normally, I've been used to playing on very hard, pushing up to legendary. For Attila, I'm actually quite happy playing at hard, and that's still giving me a real challenge if you've watched any of my starting faction Let's Plays, Danes, Saxons and Huns. Weak points of Rome 2 for the most part on the campaign seem to have been firmed up. We've obviously got the family tree coming back, and politics makes a return, although it can seem confusing at first until you understand the differences between dominion, control and how that affects your power. Also managing things like loyalties on a character, again, all those options that you have within your family tree to interact with other characters, much appreciated. But again, kind of like the skill tree, I feel that these could be expanded even further, and I don't think that Creative Assembly should be almost worried about overcomplicating things. I think some more depth in these areas would be much appreciated. I don't think they need to go full on Crusader Kings 2 grand strategy style, but there's a lot more options that they could, I would have thought, easily add in, which would just add even more layers of depth to your characters. I mean, for once, I'm really getting attached to my generals again. I haven't been attached to my generals since Medieval 2. But with the family tree and Attila, I actually, I get worried for my generals when they're on the battlefield pressed against the corner. I don't want to lose my factionaire. If he's killed, the line dies and I have to adopt someone in, and that, wrecks my plan that I had for my family tree. And I'm really getting a chance to roleplay again in Total War, which is something I haven't had for a while. And I really feel that, Attila does this quite well, but it could be expanded on. Diplomacy, personally, I haven't seen much change there. There's a few new options in there, but I feel diplomacy is an area Total War needs to improve on. It's doing okay. It's certainly not, a bad feature as such, but I feel that in the next couple of Total War games, or even, if it's something that could be patched and updated further along in Attila's kind of release cycle, then I'd love to see things getting reworked for diplomacy a little bit. I mean, I personally would love to see the option to trade regions coming back. I thought that was a good feature in previous titles that had it, and I missed that in the more recent Total War games. So that's something different to see, and I just like just diplomacy to change a little bit. It's been the same since Empire, pretty much. There's not been a huge reworking of things there. I'd like to see things change there. Let me know if you agree or disagree. The tier unit system. Now, at first I wasn't sure about how this would work. I thought it would be too restrictive. But actually, I quite like the tier system, not only for my own army management and upgrades, but also for the AI. It does seem to force the AI to build stronger armies later on, which is good. You get more of a challenge, and you come up against better troops, which means that the battles will last longer. Coming to that within the... I'll talk about the pacing of the tier system when I talk about battles in a bit. But I like the tier system. I also like the upgrade system for troops. This was a feature that in Rome 2 you pretty much only had for the Roman faction. And I thought it was such a waste that only Rome had the opportunity to just retrain or upgrade troops through the army management panel. And I thought it was really a feature that could have been expanded further. And, Creative Assembly have done that. I still feel like more variety of troops for certain factions. Nordic levy spam everywhere. I feel there's a few too many Nordic levy all over the place. Saxons could do, I think, with a few more troops, and certainly the Celtic factions seem to all be using Nordic levies, which, that could be expanded upon. And just make, again, the upgrade system even more worthwhile of really progressing through your troops. But I like it overall. It's fun to play as a horde and gives a different challenge. Again, it's not necessarily about building up a kingdom, it's about surviving and migrating to where you want to try and establish a new life for your horde. Playing as the Huns, obviously you don't have the option to settle, and you're just on a raising spree or subjugation spree across the world. But it does add a kind of different dynamic to the game that I haven't really felt since Barbarian Invasion for Rome Total War. Certainly not a traditional Total War Attila. It's not this sit and build an empire. You can do that, but most of the time you're going to be hard pressed on a couple of frontiers. It's about quick expansion or quick survival. Climate change is a feature that I actually really like. I like the idea that the hordes and everyone's moving south, and that just again kind of has this knock-on effect with how the hordes are moving, how the AI is reacting, trying to flee the ice and snow, moving south where they're migrating to, and to the west where it's going to be warmer, and that again has that impact on the Western Roman Empire and Eastern Roman Empire, as you have this invasion of tribes and hordes descending from the north. Obviously, though, to the Geats of the Viking forefathers, they don't care about the snow, and I love that they've got a... they don't take any attrition. In fact, that they are kind of the ice warriors of the north. They can take anything. Battle-wise, pacing, again, this is reflected in the tier system which I mentioned earlier. Tier 1 units and battles with that, I've seen people, to a degree, complaining about this system. And to be honest, when I first played the preview build for Attila, I was worried that battles were going to be way too quick. But actually playing it now, even on tier 1, just because units break quicker, there's a kind of a newer or rework system where units will actually come back, or there's a higher chance for them to rally and come back into the fight. Now obviously they'll have lost some men, but that can actually be crucial at some points for them to then launch a new counter-offensive or flanking manoeuvre. And it does actually seem to make battles last longer, and I wouldn't actually say I complain about the tier 1 battles now, especially if you can take out a general early on. Generals are vitally important on the battlefield and on the campaign for all their skills and bonuses that they get, as well as keeping other units alive and giving them buffs. And on the battlefield, it's actually nice to see generals' units not being too overpowered. They can actually be quite susceptible. So you have to protect them, but also you need to keep them near your men to keep them in line, keep their morale up. But then if you lose a general, your army will nearly completely insta-rout. With battles, though, I would like to see some improvements to the way units fight when they're backed into a corner, going to things like last stand and fighting to the very last man. Often you'll see in a siege battle where you're locked up in a corner, often the map where there is it's sort of often attributed to the Viking factions, but you'll see a settlement up on a raised hill above the settlement. And there's a nice street where you can just layer defensive lines of units all across it as you go up the hill. And I've had battles on there where the AI is pushed on up, they broke through my defences, only for my general to break after taking 20 losses, and there's still 130 of them left. I'd love for units to go into Last Stand more, and I'm hoping that Creative Assembly can work on that and make Last Stands trigger within certain situations and certain conditions. That would make for those battles really to be even more epic. When the units are backed against the corner. But yeah, for the most part I'm happy with the tier system. Later on, tier 2, tier 3 units, they hold on for longer, they last longer, and they'll fight for even longer in battle when matched up against similar leveled or tiered troops. Also, like that the fatigue system has been reworked and tweaked in Attila. I still think it's maybe a bit too fast now. Units, if you run them the distance of a map that you'd run in Rome 2, that they would normally come down to being tired, they will be absolutely exhausted by the time you do that in Attila. You can only really run them for short bursts, getting them ready for charges or quick flanking manoeuvres. The rest of the time you're going to need to walk them or let them rest. Now, while they do run out of their... their fatigue goes down a lot, or rather goes up a lot quicker, it goes down faster as well than it did in Rome 2, so units will recover faster, which does mean that you can run them round, hit them into a hidden position, say cavalry for instance, into a flanking position, hide them in the woods for, I don't even know, maybe 15, 20, 30 seconds, something like that, and then they will be recovered enough for a successful flanking attack. So again, that kind of, the battles in a way seem faster, but in other ways, they Creative Assembly have got the balance right. Still not something I'm 100% sure on whether I like or not. As I've sort of mentioned, I wouldn't mind seeing some tweaks. Raiders as a new unit type, I think they're quite a cool addition again, fits in with the gritty feel, flame, fire, raise and burn that Attila has going on. Raider units will set fire to buildings as they run through or as they're left stationary within a settlement, an enemy settlement, and also they have faster capture power than other units, so you can flank round with them, capture a main square, either get the morale bonus or if you're in a province capital, claim victory for your faction, and often that's quite useful when the enemy is heavily fortified. Sound. Now, as you hopefully heard at the start of this video, on the main menu you have that lovely video motion of the horde and their archers running across in front of a burning city. The music in the game, I think, is very atmospheric. Again, reflects the feel and period and atmosphere that Attila brings to the Total War series of death and destruction. The apocalypse is coming. Music is fantastic. Unfortunately, there seems to have been, in some places, rather heavy reused audio from Rome 2, which in one way isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, the time periods haven't changed too much, but to hear exactly the same phrases from a lot of units when you engage with them in battle, or when you click on the general in the diplomacy menu or something like that, it's kind of disappointing that there wasn't more time spent on adding in new audio. But I guess it begs the question, you know, did Creative Assembly need to add in new audio? Some people feel really passionate about it. I've seen on the forums. I'm kind of in the middle. I wouldn't have minded seeing new audio, but for me it isn't necessarily a huge deal breaker. It is just kind of a shame that there's not as much new audio as some of us would have liked. Performance-wise, now, as I mentioned at the start of this video, I'm going to be doing a benchmark at the end of this first impressions to kind of wrap things up. You'll get to see my settings again, and a benchmark test just of that. I should mention, though, that actually this same goes for the benchmark in Rome 2. The benchmark, actually, I find, is not the best for determining your actual in-game performance. Often, you'll actually get slightly higher FPS than the benchmark showing. For Attila in particular, it's a heavily scripted siege setting, so there's lots of burning buildings and, you know, siege equipment going on, so that may well be a slightly higher load than your average battle. So what I'd recommend as well as running the benchmark, would be jumping into a battle using an FPS counter, either the one that's built into Steam or using Fraps or something like that, and just testing, you know, certain combinations of sizes of armies and settings in an actual land battle or a custom battle until you're happy with the result. I think that's sometimes a better way of doing it. But at least the benchmark is, you know, at least comparable against your own benchmarks if you want to test that. But again, that's at the end of the video. Graphically, Attila is obviously more, is higher than Rome 2. It's more demanding as well. And apparently this is due to larger texture resolutions than Rome 2. Fire, now initially I thought this would have a huge effect on FPS. Personally, with my rig, with my PC, I've not seen a huge impact with fire. Obviously, we're still waiting to see proper drivers from both Nvidia and AMD to see whether, you know, they're going to radically improve certain graphics cards for Total War Attila. I'm still waiting to see Nvidia release one for my GTX 980. So when that happens, I may well do another benchmark to see if that improves things. As far as I know right now, Nvidia have only released an SLI profile for Attila. I don't know about AMD because I don't have an AMD card. But I would like to see still some further improvement in performance and optimization, further patching. Obviously, this is the same engine from Rome 2 at the bare bones. It is a modular engine from what I understand, so things can be taken out and upgraded. That's the TW3 engine. Often people call it the Warscape engine. The Warscape is just the kind of graphics end of the processor, that modular section. So that handles all the graphics to do with it. But the engine underneath it all is, as far as I know, referred to as TW3. So as far as I know, Attila is still running that same engine. We're still on 32-bit. It'll be interesting to see where Total War goes over the next year or so with the addition of DirectX 12, and whether they take that jump to go to 64-bit and whether that's going to be more of a help or a hindrance for them. Performance-wise as well, I want to talk about the campaign and battle AI in this section. I know I touched on the campaign being the campaign AI being more focused on the player earlier on, and that as a result seems to have a harder difficulty because you're often fighting off more of the AI. I have seen instances where players have reported though on forums that the AI doesn't seem that interested in them some of the time. Again, varying difficulty levels would need a complete test of to really assert how much the AI is going to target you. But overall, the campaign and battle AI does seem improved. It's certainly, I think, a bit better than Rome 2's. It's no worse than Rome 2's, which is a good thing. And I haven't seen anywhere near as many silly AI mess-ups, and actually not too bad pathfinding in some sieges as well. I did see one unit getting trapped behind a building when they were trying to flank me, but apart from that, in about nearly 50 hours of play so far, including playing on preview and review builds, probably more than that, I haven't seen anything too colossal going wrong with the AI for the most part. Sometimes the campaign AI can still wander off and you'll abandon a settlement, but it doesn't seem as bad as Rome 2, so it does seem improved, but obviously there is still room for improvement. I'm sure Creative Assembly are aware of this, and for many it still remains one of the weaker parts of the series, but hopefully it can be improved further. So I'm now going to move on to sieges, before I then wrap things up with naval battles and kind of just reiterate some of the points that I've made in my first impressions here, and then show you that benchmark. So sieges wise, well, when I wrote this down, I was actually saying torches are still present. However, while the Longbeards DLC and the accompanying patch that was due to come out yesterday has been delayed, within those patch notes it has confirmed that Creative Assembly are removing torches for a melee-based system in sieges, so that when perhaps you don't have any siege equipment, or when the AI doesn't have any siege equipment, instead of trying to burn down your gates with torches, which a huge amount of the community didn't like, it will now be replaced by a melee-based system. So things like axes, two-handed weapons will do more damage against gates than things like spears and little daggers, but you'll slowly be able to try and whittle down gates with your men, but you'll need actually some of your best units to actually do a lot of damage to take those gates down at a reasonable rate. Obviously things like burning oil will come into play here and could potentially wreck your forces, so this is really a last-ditch attempt. Maybe if you've weakened a gate with catapult or onager fire but haven't quite finished it off, maybe that's the time to do it. Fire damage from arrows will only work on wooden gates, following the release of that patch, which I think will be in a week or so's time now, and fire damage or flaming shots will have no effect on or produce no damage to reinforced or metal iron gates, which is good. I think that's certainly an improvement over the torches-based system. Maybe it's not the end-all. Maybe there should still... I mean, some people want the game, or a siege rather, to just kind of end and your units have to retreat if you have no siege equipment left. I'm not sure if that's the right way to do it, and actually I'd quite like to see your opinions and thoughts in the comments regarding this, and see what you all suggest. But I certainly think it's a step in the right direction. Siege AI, for the most part, actually seems okay in Attila. I haven't, again, seen any huge problems, bar a couple of pathfinding issues. But it does know how to assault you. Often when it's besieging you as well, it will attack and split up its force from multiple angles, which is nice to see, so you have to cover various points. I will say in sieges that I'm not sure yet whether towers are OP or just they're meant to be that destructive. What do you think about the watchtowers in settlements, both provincial capitals and normal towns? You will get watchtowers in all of those. I would like to say, though, I think barricades need their health improving. I know they're meant to be quickly thrown together things from scraps of wood and what have you lying around, but it does seem that like one attack or two swings of the sword from an enemy unit will instantly break a barricade. Not that I want to see units hacking for 5 minutes at a barricade, but I feel like they could get a slight health increase. I think that might help them out a little bit more. Just make barricades seem a little bit more important. I know it often does funnel units around a different way, but they'll start funneling around one way, then a unit will smash your barricade and they'll all turn around and come back through where the barricade was anyway, so it doesn't seem to have caused anything but about a 10-15 second distraction. So I wouldn't mind seeing barricades improved, at least having their health buffed a little bit perhaps, or reducing the damage that units do to them. Finally, naval battles. Now this is a feature that I feel is still finding its feet. Now, I actually enjoy naval battles in Attila far more than I did in Rome 2. Despite the fact that you don't have ramming in Attila, I like the fact that you can obviously set ships on fire with flaming arrows, onager ships. Greek fire ships are awesome. No qualms there, they're fantastic. They look really cool, they do a crap ton of damage. And you can actually, if you can position a Greek fire ship near the shore, you'll be able to burn units that are standing on the shore as well, which is good fun. The flamethrowers of their time. But yes, I still feel that naval battles have a way to go. Obviously, they're one of the newest big features brought into the series from Empire. But in a way, I actually feel that naval battles were done better in Empire and Napoleon than they were since then. I don't know if that's just that melee-based naval battles don't work as well, or what, but I feel there could be some improvement there, and I kind of feel like some features, I don't know if this is it, but I often feel like wind doesn't actually have an effect in the game anymore, whereas it did in Empire and Napoleon, the way you positioned your ship. Now, obviously in Attila, lots of ships have sails. I know they've got rowing oars, and it's not necessarily the complete age of sail, but it would be nice to see, you know, just them taken further forward and developed and given a bit more time, I think. But, as I said, I find them actually more enjoyable than Rome 2's. But yes, I find them fun, and I like that I'm actually having, if anything, more dual land and naval battles occurring in Attila than I did in Rome 2. So, those are kind of my first impressions, my thoughts, my own opinions, no one else's, for Total War Attila. Have I got things right? Have I got things wrong? Are there some features that I have missed and that you'd like to see me highlight? Let me know, and I'd be happy to continue discussion in the comments. But let me know, and obviously if you have your own impressions, feel free to put them down below. I'm sure we'll all be interested in seeing what other people have got to say as well. But yeah, overall, I feel that Attila it's certainly a decent improvement on Rome 2. You know, certain features, you look back and think it's certainly a shame that these weren't in Rome 2, that these improvements weren't made to the game. But overall, I do see Attila as kind of almost one of the last games in the current Total War cycle. The games that come after Attila, whatever they may be, I'd like to see almost some more radical improvements, some radical changes. Total War has pretty much stayed primarily the same sort of game throughout the last 15 years. I know there's been improvements graphically, there's been more depth added, there's been more features, and that's fine. But particularly from Empire to Attila, now while I'm sure the design team will have said, you know, they've changed lots of things and things have radically changed, and yes, there have been. But I kind of feel like the next game, whatever they do, I want to really see Creative Assembly take the gloves off and, you know, bring in some of the bold features that the community have mentioned and that, you know, I'm sure Creative Assembly appreciate would really take the series to new levels. So I say it's time for gloves off, Creative Assembly. Really go absolutely crazy with the next title, whatever it is. And yeah, let's take Total War to a new level. That said, and obviously this is the first impressions, but some people have also been asking me what would I score Attila. Personally, I'm quite happy to say I feel it's an 8 out of 10. That's how I feel about it. Obviously feel free to disagree, but that's how I view the game. An 8 out of 10, a solid addition to the series, and a certain improvement over Rome 2. Now I'm going to wrap things up by again showing you my settings for the game and running that benchmark. But as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, rate and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Take pride in joining the Legion. Until next time, enjoy the benchmark. Ciao for now.